2026 Jacksonville Jaguars schedule has officially been released. And I'm going to go through every one of the Jaguars games for this upcoming season, give my instant reaction, thoughts, and just overall opinions on the Jaguars schedule for this upcoming season. This is Jags Now, presented by our wonderful friends over at Prize Picks. Make sure you use code HMA to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. So without any further ado, let's talk about the Jacksonville Jaguars kind of schedule, go through each matchup. We'll do kind of a brief run through and then go through each game kind of individually. We'll kind of just go through in chunks, though, to kind of start off with. Starting off with week number 1, you're at home versus the Cleveland Browns. Yes, the Travis Hunter revenge game, I guess if you want to call it, or the Travis Hunter trade. Who won the trade between the Cleveland Browns and the Jacksonville Jaguars? They will take place in week 1. Week 2 at Denver Broncos. Obviously, the Jaguars had a really classic game late in the year last year against the Denver Broncos. You're also returning to Mile High this time around in week 2 of the 2026 schedule. Then in week 3, New England Patriots. It's not an easy start here for the Jags as they take on Drake May and company in Duval County. So it's going to be a very interesting one there. Cincinnati Bengals, you're on the road at week 4. Joe Burrow. They always haven't gotten off to the hottest start during September, but I do think that's still going to be a tough matchup for the Jacksonville Jaguars as we move into the next part of the schedule here. You got back-to-back London games, as Jaguars fans are well aware of at this point. Jaguars are going to have 2 of their home games designated here in 2026 in London as they are doing renovations at Everbank Stadium during their kind of renovation process. So week 5, they will take on the Philadelphia Eagles there in London, followed by the Houston Texans at Wembley Stadium, the Eagles game being at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium there in England. Week 7, you have a bye, so it was granted the Jaguars requested that if they are going to have these back-to-back London games to have a bye right afterwards. The NFL was very gracious in doing so. They get the week 7 bye. Follow that up with a divisional matchup for the Indianapolis Colts. Week 8 should be an interesting one. We'll see how Daniel Jones and company looks this time around here in 2026 as we get further along into the schedule now. Week 9, you're on the road at Baltimore. Not an easy slate by any means. That's going to be one of your tougher games on the schedule. Week 10 at the Tennessee Titans. We'll see how Cam Ward looks. It's also Robert Saleh, Liam Cohen. The real ones know there's going to be a little bit of some underlying tones there, I bet, but I think that should be a pretty good AFC South matchup. Week 11 at the New York Giants. The Giants, I think, are going to be a much improved team this time around. The Jaguars take them on week 11 on the road there and in 3 consecutive road games. Then you get a home game against the Tennessee Titans, so you face the Titans twice in 3 weeks. Follow that up with the Chicago Bears. Week 13 at Soldier Field. Not going to be an easy one, but the Bears, they've got high expectations this year, along with the Jacksonville Jaguars. This should be a really interesting matchup between 2 of the NFL's perennial highest win teams from last season. And then getting into the final stretch here, we've got the Pittsburgh Steelers on Monday Night Football. One of 2 Jaguars primetime games, if you don't count the London standalone games as primetime games. They're at home against the Steelers on Monday Night Football. Follow that up with the Houston Texans, which I'm not going to lie, we'll talk about this more. The fact that the Houston Texans get one of those London games and then the Jaguars have to play late in the season at Houston, it's not ideal for Jacksonville. Then you follow it up with their second primetime game. It's the Dallas Cowboys on Sunday Night Football in Week 16. It's a big spot for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Could they be potentially, along with the Dallas Cowboys, both be fighting for 2 potential playoff spots? Very interesting matchup there. Jaden Daniels, Week 17 versus the Commanders. You get them at home. And then to round things out, you've got the Indianapolis Colts on the road, Week 18. Now, before we kind of get into it here, and I'll do kind of more of a, schedule or record prediction video tomorrow here on the channel, but I want to hear from you guys. Predict the Jacksonville Jaguars record for 2026 down below in the comments section. I'll give you my full official prediction tomorrow, but I want to hear you guys' predictions down below in the comments section. Today's show is made possible by our friends over at SeatGeek. You can use SeatGeek to go to a numerous amount of sporting events, and if you use code CHAT10 to get 10% off your next set of tickets. The NFL schedule is officially released, and SeatGeek is the best place to go if you want to get tickets to a Jaguars game this year. MLB is in full swing. The NBA and NHL playoffs are here, and you can get World Cup tickets on SeatGeek. The Jaguars take on the Eagles and Texans overseas in London, so even if you're overseas, you can still watch the Jaguars play. Also, what about the Rays and Marlins? They face off this upcoming weekend at Tropicana Field. Get-in prices for Saturday's game are as low as $28, and you can go get in for under $30 on any of those 3 days. Whether it's a ball game, concert, or any other event, SeatGeek is the place to go as they have your back when purchasing tickets. Each ticket is rated on a scale of 1 to 10, so you know you're getting a good deal. Look for the green dots as that means good, red means bad. Use code CHAT10 for 10% off your next set of tickets at SeatGeek. That's 10% off any tickets with promo code CHAT10. Make sure you click the link in the description to download the app and have the code automatically added to your account so you can use it later. Thank you, SeatGeek. All right, starting off here, we'll break down this kind of games now more in single-handed chunks here. We'll start off with the Cleveland Browns. So Travis Hunter, the big trade between the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Cleveland Browns from the 2025 NFL Draft. These two teams will now face off against one another. Obviously, if you're the Browns, you have a new head coach. Who will be their quarterback? It seems like they've got an open quarterback competition between Deshaun Watson, Shedeur Sanders. They've got a really talented defense. Obviously, Myles Garrett coming off a historic season for the Cleveland Browns. They're not going to be any team that you can just kind of roll over, and you certainly shouldn't look ahead if you're the Jacksonville Jaguars. If you're looking to try to build off of momentum from last year, I hate to say it, but this is kind of one of those semi-must-win Week 1 games. I'm not going to go full must-win Week 1, but if you're Jacksonville at home, you need to take care of business against the Cleveland Browns. Moving on to Week number 2 at Denver Broncos. This is one that I think a lot of fans last year going into this game against the Denver Broncos during the 2025 NFL season, I think a lot of people were thinking that Denver was going to kind of handle Jacksonville in that spot, and Jacksonville kind of took care of business against the Denver Broncos and Bo Nix and company. Now they did add Jalen Waddle during the NFL offseason. That'll be a really nice addition to pair alongside Courtland Sutton. They return a lot of their talent. They didn't necessarily make a lot of moves in terms of the draft. I mean, they did add Jonah Coleman during the draft, but not a lot of moves that really make a difference in terms of what in comparison to what other teams made during free agency in the draft. But the Denver Broncos really didn't need to. They were one of the more talented teams in the NFL last season. It was a big reason why they made it to the AFC title game last year in the first place. So Week 2, this is a heck of a start for Jacksonville. And then following it up with who they played in the AFC title game, the New England Patriots, who ultimately made it to the Super Bowl before falling to the Seattle Seahawks. New England Patriots, obviously they've kind of had some let's call it off-season storylines between Mike Vrabel, Diana Rossini, what's going on there, and could be a very big distraction. We'll see if that ultimately kind of affects them to kind of kick off the season. But I think if you're Jacksonville, this is a chance to really stack up your defense against one of the better offenses in Drake May. We'll see ultimately if A.J. Brown gets dealt from the Philadelphia Eagles to the New England Patriots to kind of pair along with Drake May. Will Campbell, after kind of having a disappointing end to the 2025 season, how does he look against two really solid pass rushers, obviously, and Josh Hines-Allen and Trayvon Walker? A lot of good storylines to go into this Week 3 matchup. Moving into Week number 4 against the Cincinnati Bengals on the road. So 2 home games, 2 games on the road to start your kind of Week 4 matchups here. The Bengals, listen, this is something that it's been kind of well documented that Joe Burrow and the Bengals, they just really don't get off to the best starts in September, and this would technically be an October 4th game. But if you're Jacksonville coming off these first 3 games, you really ideally like to win 2 out of your first 3 along with that Cleveland Browns game to get to 3-1. But if because if you at least win the Browns game and you go 1-2 in this stretch and you're 2-2 coming out of September, it's not the end of the world per se. That being said, if you can win that Browns game in Week 1 and then somehow get a 2-1 split here to kind of kick off these first 4 games of the season, it really puts you in a good spot. Obviously, the Bengals traded for Dexter Lawrence from the New York Giants. Still think they've got a really talented team, especially when Burrow, Chase, and Higgins are all healthy. First of 2 London games for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Seems like it's just second home for Jacksonville, playing in London. The first of 2 matchups, playing against the Philadelphia Eagles. Jalen Hurts, they're kind of switching things up. Going to see if he can play more of a traditional drop back quarterback since they made some decent moves. We'll see if ultimately they move on from A.J. Brown, where he gets traded to, how that affects their offense. Does Devonta Smith eventually kind of step up there? They signed Rick Woolen in free agency to kind of help out their cornerback room there in Philadelphia. And again, another, these really first 5 games, you got 4 really tough opponents here for the Jacksonville Jaguars. So it's not going to be easy, but if you want to be some of the best in the National Football League and in the AFC, you're going to have to take down teams like this in Philadelphia. Even if it's in London, will be no slouch. Same with the Houston Texans, who Jaguars fans obviously are very familiar with. This one kind of stinks from a Jaguars perspective. You obviously were going to get the 2 London games just because, like I mentioned earlier, you'll have those kind of, renovations going on in the stadium. You'll then be playing in Orlando in 2027 before hopefully relocating back to Everbank Stadium here in 2028. But get the Houston Texans in London. Huge matchup. Could be very much the end of a 5-game just gauntlet for the Jacksonville Jaguars to start off the season. It's in London, so you'll obviously have been there for a week already, so maybe that gives you somewhat of an advantage before the bye week. So this is going to be a huge matchup for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Hopefully they can at least go bare minimum, 3-3 in these first 6-game stretches, but we'll see ultimately how it lands out. We could not do this show, guys, if it wasn't for our wonderful friends over at Prize Picks. Today's show is sponsored by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is America's #1 sports picks app. The playoffs are here for basketball, baseball is underway, and it's time to cash in with Prize Picks. Prize Picks is America's #1 sports picks app, and it's the best place to win cash while watching sports. If you're a hoops guy, you can go with points, rebounds, assists, blocks, or three-pointers. If you're more of a seam head, you can choose hits, home runs, or strikeouts. The app is really easy to use. Just pick more or less on a few player stats and lock in your lineup. I've got a season-long football projection here that I'm really a big fan of, and it's $20 to win 60 on this 2-player lineup. Just give me the more on Emeka Egbuka's receiving yards. Obviously, no more Mike Evans in Tampa. I think he's going to have a heck of a season. And Bashal Tootin, leading the rock. No more Travis Etienne. He is off to New Orleans. Bashal Tootin, I think, is going to have a heck of a season for the Jaguars. Again, you can copy my picks. You can fade my picks. Just make sure you do it with our friends over at Prize Picks. Play alongside all of us at Chat Sports. Get $50 in lineups whenever you play your first $5 lineup with code HMA. Link is also available in the comments and description of today's video. Shout out to Prize Picks for being one of our sponsors. All right, man. So obviously after the first 6 weeks gauntlet that you have, if you're Jacksonville, you have the Week 7 bye before you take on the Indianapolis Colts in Week 8. And first of 2 matchups, obviously, between these AFC South foes. And, Daniel Jones, I think last year, pairing up with Shane Steichen, they built some really nice momentum at the beginning of the season before Jonathan Taylor and that offense kind of sputtered down the stretch. They obviously made the move for Sauce Gardner. We'll see ultimately how that kind of pays off. You add him to hopefully kind of boost your secondary up. And if you're Jacksonville, you kind of come off the bye, you really need to kind of pick up steam here. And again, if you're able to get through that first initial stretch of the season at least around 500, or dare I say even above 500, you're in a really good spot if you can have that extra week of preparation going up against the Indianapolis Colts. Moving on to week number 9, and it's the Baltimore Ravens on the road. This, by far, I think, is one of the more tougher games on the entire slate for the Jacksonville Jaguars. And Baltimore, look, you obviously hire Jesse Minter in the offseason. He's going to come over and be your new head coach. You obviously get a new offensive coordinator for Lamar Jackson and Declan Doyle. I think that's a really nice addition. And I think Baltimore, it just kind of got to a point with John Harbaugh where they were really talented. They were always, in competing and always really respected in the AFC, but they needed to make a change if they ever were trying to reach their kind of Super Bowl aspirations. And we'll see how Jesse Minter looks in his first season as a head coach. I do think he's going to be really good for Baltimore. And in the spot for Jacksonville on the road, it's not going to be the easiest, but like I said, it's one of those things where if you're looking to be one of the AFC's best, you're going to have to take down teams like the Baltimore Ravens. Moving on, first of 2 matchups against the Tennessee Titans on the road. Now, if you guys remember, Liam Cohen, Robert Saleh kind of had a little bit of a spiff last season after the San Francisco 49ers, where Saleh was the defensive coordinator. Liam Cohen, they briefly kind of got into it post-game, and Saleh kind of just extinguished the fire on that, saying, hey, it's kind of a misunderstanding. I didn't mean to, have any disrespect. Well, now he's the coach of the Tennessee Titans going up against Liam Cohen twice a year. It's going to be a really interesting matchup, one of the more highly anticipated matchups in the AFC South, where Cam Ward going to a second season, you add Brian Daboll in as the offensive coordinator, you draft Carnell Tate, again, pretty high, but if you believe he can be your future wide receiver 1 to pair alongside Cam Ward and a young quarterback, I think that's something you do. I don't think Tennessee roster-wise is quite at the level that Jacksonville is at, but nonetheless, in a divisional matchup, anything can happen, especially on the road. Moving on to week number 11 against the New York Football Giants. They added John Harbaugh, speaking of the Baltimore Ravens, and I do think that they're kind of better off from where they were this last season. I think Jackson Dart, you surround him, drafting Francis Maui-Noah in the draft. You also add Arvell Reese to a defense with John Harbaugh. I think only good things are going to come from that. Cam Skattebo, hopefully he can stay healthy for the season. I think he was a really bright spot for them. Malik Neighbors, he's kind of going through some injury stuff. We'll see if he's even going to be available for week 1. But once you get into week 11, this is a team that you cannot sleep on if you're Jacksonville. I I simply think the New York Giants are going to be competing for a playoff spot. Kind of early prediction here. I have the right to kind of change my mind, but I think with the moves that the Giants made this offseason, I think they're going to be one of the better teams in the NFC that no one's really talking about just yet. And then for the second time in 3 weeks, you've got the Tennessee Titans again, this time at home. And while I do think that the Tennessee Titans are building something under Robert Saleh, and they're not going to be quite the same as they were last year in terms of just, they, for crying out loud, got a top 4 pick. They were just not one of the better teams in any aspect. And Cam Ward just looked lost there at times. Jacksonville at home, you need to take care of business. Can you potentially sweep the Tennessee Titans? It would make things really easy for you down as you get later into the football schedule. And speaking of the Tennessee Titans, I sit at the same desk as our Titans Today host, Brett Alper, and he's been kind of talking some smack a little bit about the Tennessee Titans, and it's not only just about the Titans schedule and everything, but also a little sub-battle that we've got here at Chat Sports. Jags, now, we're currently trailing Titans Today in new subs during the month of May. Help us out, take down Titans Today. We can't lose the freaking Tennessee Titans. Come on now, hit that subscribe button for the latest Jags news and rumors. Getting into week number 13 now, and it is the Chicago Bears on the road at Soldier Field. And this is one of those games where Ben Johnson, Caleb Williams, they obviously had a really magical season that ultimately ended in the playoffs to the Los Angeles Rams and Matthew Stafford. And I think that there's a lot of things that the Chicago Bears are going to try to build off of last season. They obviously had Colston Loveland kind of have a mini breakout in his rookie season, who emerges as Rome Odunze or Luther Burden as the wide receiver 1 in that offense. They brought in Kobe Bryant from Seattle, drafted Dylan Thieneman out of Oregon. So a really talented Bears team. If you're Jacksonville, going to be one of your tougher matchups along with Baltimore. That takes place again on the road. Kind of a brutal schedule for Jacksonville so far. All right, first of 2 primetime games. Monday Night Football against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, at this current moment, Aaron Rodgers hasn't quite signed with the Pittsburgh Steelers. If I had to bet my money today, I would expect that Aaron Rodgers is the quarterback for the Steelers in 2026, but they're under a new regime. No longer Mike Tomlin. It is Mike McCarthy leading the way for Pittsburgh. It is at home, so I do think that is somewhat of an advantage, and I do want to kind of take a look at the schedule for both Pittsburgh and Jacksonville just to kind of see who Pittsburgh played the previous week, because Jacksonville obviously are coming off of playing the Bears, but you get that little extra day rest. We'll see who the Steelers picked, but still a really talented roster, still a lot of talent. You obviously added also Michael Pittman to go alongside DK Metcalf. They drafted Jeremy Bernard, so maybe a little shift in philosophy for Pittsburgh. I'm curious to see what they look like in Week 14. Week 15 now, the Houston Texans on the road. This is advantage Houston. I'm going to be just kind of open and honest about this, that the Texans, they extended Will Anderson Jr. They made some really good moves in terms of kind of addressing their offensive line throughout the NFL offseason, and I thought they had a pretty good draft, just full disclosure here. And I think that the Texans are going to be the Jaguars' main competition in terms of competing in the AFC South. So this could very much determine not just playoff seeding, but also seeding in your division. And you have to go on the road. So not an easy slate if you're the Jacksonville Jaguars. However, that's just kind of how the schedule breaks sometimes. It just kind of stinks that you don't also get to play them in Jacksonville, but that's just the way the schedule kind of played out. So Week 16, Dallas Cowboys, Sunday Night Football. I was kind of curious to see that this late in the year that they have the Jacksonville Jaguars against the Dallas Cowboys on Sunday Night Football. Now, again, you get this late into the season. Does that game maybe potentially get flexed out depending on where both teams are? But if you're Dallas, you had an offseason where you drafted Caleb Downs to kind of add to that secondary. I still don't think that their defense is going to be by any means top of the NFL or anything like that. But if Dak Prescott's healthy, he's proven that the Cowboys will at least be competitive. He's proved that throughout his time as an NFL player. George Pickens, we'll see how that situation unfolds as the season progresses, along with CeeDee Lamb. But those two were extremely dynamic last year. Jacksonville takes on Dallas on Sunday Night Football. Another NFC East matchup going up against the Washington Commanders, Jaden Daniels and company. They obviously paid Dafe Owe big money during free agency to kind of shore up that defense. They also drafted Sonny Styles to add to that linebacker room. Terry McLaurin, Antonio Williams. So I don't necessarily love everything they got on offense. I still would like to see them if I'm Washington surround Jaden Daniels with more talent, but they did address it a little bit, so you can't necessarily knock it. Is Jaden Daniels closer to rookie year Jaden Daniels or what Jaden Daniels was last year? Ultimately, we'll find out. You do get them at home, though. I feel pretty good about Jacksonville's chances. And rounding it out with the Indianapolis Colts, Week 18. This is one that, again, on the road, I do like the Jaguars' chances. I'm just not a believer in Daniel Jones. I respect Shane Steichen as an offensive play caller. Jonathan Taylor's clearly a stud. Tyler Warren's a really good young tight end that they can kind of build their offense around. You re-signed Alec Pierce, obviously that big contract of $100-something million. So it's not going to be an easy game by any stretch. I would still pick Jacksonville, all things considered. Again, we're way further down the line. So what do these teams even look like at Week 18? We're obviously not sure yet, but that is just kind of my general thoughts on that one. So that is the Jacksonville Jaguars full schedule here on Jags Now. Just quickly rapid fire going through it one more time. Week 1, hosting the Cleveland Browns. Week 2, on the road against the Denver Broncos, followed up by returning to home to take on the New England Patriots in Week 3. At the Cincinnati Bengals Week 4, before going to 2 straight London games against the Philadelphia Eagles and the Houston Texans. Week 7 bye, followed up by a Week 8 home game against the Indianapolis Colts. And then on the road, and this is a really tough part of the stretch here, of their schedule, Baltimore Ravens on the road, at the Tennessee Titans, at the New York Giants. Then you're at home versus the Titans, on the road against the Chicago Bears Week 13. First primetime game, Steelers Monday Night Football Week 14. Week 15 against the Texans on the road. At Dallas Sunday Night Football before taking on the Commanders at home Week 17. And against the Colts at Week 18. That'll be it for this episode of Jags Now, presented by Chat Sports. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We will have you covered on all things Jaguars news, rumors, everything. And again, we're bringing you guys a Jaguars record prediction video tomorrow. So make sure you guys subscribe and check it out here on the channel. And until next time, guys, peace out.